Well, hello there. This is the Imperfectly Better podcast, a podcast that is all about the messy process of growth while still being human. I am your host, Cody, and this is the very first episode. And these are my very first words going into the mic, and I will say that I'm a little nervous, but I'm also noticing that this is a bit easier than I thought it would be. And for reasons that I'll get into later in the episode, there was a little bit of struggle with making this first episode, or at least reaching a point where I was comfortable to make and release this episode. With that said, I feel like I'm getting a little sidetracked and should get back on track. So, first off, what does imperfectly better mean? So, imperfectly better means growth without the perfectionism, without optimizing or fine tuning everything to a T. It is about becoming more honest, grounded, thoughtful, capable, and alive while still being human. So there was a time when I thought that I had to get things right, get things correct before I could move forward or feel like I was ready to do something. But honestly, there is no time where I'm going to fully be ready. I could imagine a future version of me who is finally there, finally ready to make the podcast. But the problem is, I, as I am right now, speaking these words, am here in the present, this present moment. And that future Cody, whenever he does record the podcast, I'm going to be experiencing that in the present. So that's just one of the many lessons that I have learned in my quest to finally make this podcast. But the process of growth, change, and becoming better really happens in real time. It happens in the day-to-day moments. And there will be moments where, when exploring myself, emotions, ideas, even things from pop culture or out there in the world like books, TV shows, movies, character studies, anything that I might not always get things right. But it's not about the failure or where you're wrong. It's about how you respond to that. And that is really what's at the heart of Imperfectly Better. It's that this podcast is about becoming better without needing the process to look perfect. But now, where is it that the focus and meaning of this podcast, where did it come from? Well, I used to be a computer programmer, and from a long time of working in that industry, I had eventually burned out. There is a problem within a lot of these white collar jobs where you're flaws, your misses, and your errors feel like they're constantly reflected back at you through things like job reviews, performance reviews, or really trying to make sure that a given project or program that you have installs flawlessly and correctly. And oftentimes you don't really hear a lot about the end impact and value that is coming about from your work. So it, as I kind of alluded to earlier, resulted in this situation where it felt like a lot of my failures were being reflected back at me and not enough of the successes. And being an autistic person, there were quite a lot of other things that had built up for me throughout my life too. But I had this thought after leaving my job, which was to take the things that I was passionate and good at. So, troubleshooting a good problem. I had data analytics familiarity. I was passionate about emotional intelligence, and there is something I'm into called shadow work, which is all about exploring the hidden aspects of self, the parts of you that are normally not on display, but is where things like your emotions, your beliefs, your perspectives, and how you approach the world, where all of that comes from, is your shadow. And I decided to take all of that, along with my abstract thinking as an autistic person, just being able to pick out the patterns and the visuals that other people normally wouldn't be able to see, and directing that all at myself. So I approached each of my emotions, each of my beliefs, perspectives, and even my past cycles, my past patterns, my history. I approached all of that with the goal of curiosity, understanding, and showing compassion to myself. Because you really can't wage war against yourself when doing that kind of work. And that was something that I had even learned on this journey that I took over the course of 6 months. And I ended up changing and growing a lot because of that. Like with where I'm at now, my sense of awareness as far as myself and the world around me has never felt better. My understanding of my own emotions and especially my sense of balance just feels like something that I never imagined that I could reach. And I know that there's a lot further that I can go with this. But I've also recognized that it was a bit of a messy process to try and figure this out. Like, really working through my emotions, exploring them, letting them flow, but more importantly, being able to bounce back into that balanced, calm state when you're exploring some of the tougher stuff. Some of the stuff where you may have been wrong, or you may have done wrong. In those situations, it can be hard to work through that. But what I've seen is that my ability to return to myself has vastly improved. And what I mean by returning to myself is the ability to return to a calm, balanced state. But calm and balanced also means to be able to release whatever heaviness comes from what caused it in the first place. What caused that imbalance in the first place. So just from that alone, you should begin to kind of get an idea of what you should expect when you tune into this podcast, when you listen to an episode. My goal here is really to be authentic, honest, and humble about my experiences with exploring these emotions, with exploring these different ideas, perspectives, and new paths and opportunities for wisdom, knowledge, and growth in my life and in the world too. So that wisdom, knowledge, and growth can come from anywhere in life. I've often found that when I explore things, I tend to take in what resonates. So I do have a backlog of books that I've been working through. And as I work through them, I'll eventually be sharing them on the podcast. So one such book is Life on the Bridge by Kaylin Parlow, which is all about her experiences as a autistic individual as well as an autism therapist, and just giving her perspective and her expertise on the issue. And there was quite a bit that resonated within the book as far as how I was able to connect that back to my own experiences. A lot of what she went through, a lot of what she struggles with. So that's what I'm talking about when it comes to what you can expect for what I share on this podcast. What I really would like to do with this podcast, and this is one of my big passions, is that I like to help people. But I do recognize that I'm not here to fix anyone or heal anyone. Really, what my belief is that each and every person has the ability to support themselves, or at least learn how to do so. Change cannot be fully outsourced because only you know what it's like to experience you. You are the one who has experienced your own history, your own life, and both the positives and the negatives of that. So then, how do I help people with a podcast that's all about documenting my own growth, change, and development? It's about showing people how I work through things to give inspiration on where one's own emotions, assumptions, wounds, or biases may be shaping what they see, if not getting in their own way. And a lot of these things are things that I explore too through shadow work, but also exploring things like psychology, sociology, neurology, just these different disciplines and fields that offer different perspectives on the human experience. And that by bringing those together, we get this better understanding of how it is that we may be within our own way or not fully embracing and supporting ourselves in the way that we need in order to live a happy, positive, good life, but also to be able to avoid repeating the mistakes that we've made or getting stuck within our own heads. I think this is a good time, though, to point out what this podcast is not, or what do I not want it to become. And really, with the goal of honesty and humility with this, I don't want this to become another guru platform. There's plenty of content creators out there like that already. People who have spent a long time and a lot of resources exploring all of this and being in that position to offer advice. For me, I'm more so a learn as I go kind of person. And I recognize that I won't always have the answers for what it is that I'm exploring or questioning. But I also don't want this to become something where it's a trauma dump or being overly positive when it shouldn't be. I don't want to be the kind of person who puts this out there just for ego or vanity or to create my own echo chamber. I do believe there is value in putting out a true, honest, and authentic version of myself out there in public. It allows me to learn, adjust, and change in an authentic way that reaches the core of who I am. So speaking of that point of being wrong and being able to change, why does the question, what if I'm wrong, matter? It's really a question that challenges one's own bias and assumptions. It is not something of self-hatred, self-attack, nor is it assuming that you are always wrong. It's just not letting other people define your reality. It asks, where are my emotions coming from? Why do I believe what I believe? What am I not seeing about this present situation? Am I projecting something outward? Am I avoiding something because I think I need to be perfect first? Or am I judging myself too harshly to actually grow? These are the kinds of questions that allow you to understand the parts and aspects of you that normally don't get a lot of time to be seen. The point of it is not to distrust yourself, but to become honest enough to review and check your own story. Because sometimes our emotions may be telling the truth about our pain, but not the whole truth about reality. I feel like I've given a few bits and pieces here and there as far as what you, the listener, can walk away with from listening to this podcast, but I did want to get more into what I would hope that you would walk away with. It's that through sharing my own perspective, working through these questions, troubleshooting these problems in my typical Cody way, it's that it would offer you a new perspective on your own life and things you may be dealing with, or a different way to explore a question, or even a challenge to beliefs, perspectives, biases, or aspects of yourself that are getting in the way of you. And I am absolutely open and would like to take listener questions, listener recommendations. Like, say that there's a topic or a subject that you really like, and you would like me to explore it and give my thoughts on it. I know I've already gotten a few requests like that I do plan on exploring and talking about on the podcast. But I would be able to do that too. It helps me to grow. It gives me something new to explore. And it also gives something of value back to the listeners. I would like to bring this back around to what I mentioned at the start of this episode, which was my original goals with the first episode. I've been working towards this for a good bit, like quite a few days, is how I'll put it. And I did have this original goal of releasing this on the 4th of July. Like, that was my deadline. And I was making good progress each and every day towards that. As far as getting my tools set up, reviewing over my own material, practicing, and feeling like I was ready enough to record the episode. But then yesterday came along. Today it's July 5th, as I'm recording this, by the way. But back to yesterday. Yesterday, as I was working through the template for the episode, and I was getting everything put together, something just did not feel right. So the way that I plan these episodes is, as I had mentioned, I had approached a lot of this work on myself with a data analytics perspective. And so I treated a lot of my work like data, logging, recording it, doing analysis on it, and using my AI experience, I loaded that into my own database where I can pick and query things as I'm working on putting an episode together, and it can also help me to pose questions for me to answer. This is how I like to use AI, just because it gets me to use my own intelligence when answering a question, is if the AI poses to me questions rather than answers. And so I had this all set up for the first episode. I had gone through all 3 rounds of questions where I was posed multiple questions in each round for what would I like to talk about in the first episode, what does imperfectly better mean to me, and pretty much going through 3 rounds of that where my own answers were stress tested to make sure that they were acceptable, in line with the things that I've talked about and not getting too far off script. And despite working through all of that, despite having the follow along ready, there was something wrong with it that just needed some extra time and reflection. What I had found working through things was that the follow along did not feel natural. It literally felt like a theater script for me to read off of and work along with. But the problem is, if I had done that, then this wouldn't have been natural. I wouldn't have been allowed to speak naturally. So I needed to rework the template. I did exactly that last night, came back to it today, and had a much easier and better time getting into the recording of this episode. And that is really what Imperfectly Better is all about. Is recognizing where things are going wrong, adjusting, and being better. I saw that my approach yesterday was slightly off and was impacting quality. So I adjusted and things got better. And the best part is, with everything that I've done up until this point, I'll be able to improve even more. I do plan on going back into this and listening to this episode, reviewing over it, seeing what I did right, what I did wrong, and even saying that word doesn't really feel right in this situation, if that makes any sense. I think the more accurate term to use here is that this was a learning opportunity. I recognized that I was applying a standard of success to this episode by trying to release it by a deadline. When really, when the episode is ready, it'll be ready. It'll just feel right, feel good, and I'll be able to put it out there. The other things that I've gained from this is that I troubleshot my way through the process of making this episode. So I can take those improvements of how I want the style to be, the kind of questions I want posed to me, how I want the follow along structured. All of that can be incorporated into my tools, which then just makes that available for future episodes. So all of this was just a good learning opportunity. So I really don't feel anything negative over the fact that I didn't release this by the 4th of July, but more so the 5th. And that's all fine. Because, hey, that's what this podcast is all about. That you do not need to become perfect before you are allowed to become better. And that about brings us to the end of the first episode and giving you all the breakdown on what this podcast is going to be like. I appreciate all of you who have tuned in and listened. I really do appreciate it. And I hope that this podcast is the start of a good journey for me. If you would like to get in touch, I do have a Podpage website that I can list. Otherwise, I can also list the contact form for this podcast in the episode description in case you have a recommendation, question, feedback, critique, or any ideas that you would like to send along to me. Because I'm always happy to explore just about anything and share what it is that I find. But with that, I think it's about time to bring this to a close and say thank you for tuning in, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.